Okay, this is the second town hall meeting we're having at the IW. This one is about the two of the 5-year objectives that we have about transformation and impactful products. Well, TechOps is the champion for both of these 5-year objectives. So Troy Peterson will tell about the transformation. Troy is the AD for transformation, and Mike Cilentano, the Deputy Technical Director, will tell about the impactful products.
Thanks, Paul. So welcome everyone, Troy Peterson, AD for Transformation. I'm going to go over some of the drivers for transformation, share with you and decompose the objective as a systems engineer would do, right? And then get into some of the activities and things that we've accomplished and things we plan on doing. So first, the context. If we were to just think of a simple system, just nodes and lines, what do we see happening today? What's the pervasive phenomenon that we're experiencing? One, of course, we have external actors that we're trying to interact with, but what we're seeing is we're instrumenting our systems a lot, right? Sensors and processors and pushing information to the cloud, so adding additional external actors, and it's just increasing complexity dramatically. And so how do we need to think about dealing with the complexity is modeling, right? Something that's not new, but something that we need to do. But it just keeps continuing to expand in what we're trying to manage as far as the complexity, boundaries expanding and systems connecting to systems that we haven't thought of so that we can add additional value to stakeholders. This is a chart I'm sure many have seen, the Internet of Things. It's not only that things are getting more complex, they're getting more complex rapidly, right? You can see the complexity just jumping off the chart as far as the number of connected things. 2015, they've got a picture there of a toothbrush, right? It's things we use every day. It's all around us. Not only that, but within the next 4 to 5 years, they expect it to double from where we are right now. So we often think of things in terms of right now. We need to be thinking in terms of this curve and how fast things are changing. Just to give an idea, if we connect a lot of things, here's a chart with just 30 nodes. If we had a density of 1, everything's connected to everything. We have 435 potential links. But what's really interesting is if you think of all the different configurations that system, simple system in some ways, 30 things, that it could, different configurations that could be, it's 2 to the 435th, which is just an immense number. Our systems aren't that interconnected, but they're becoming more interconnected. But how big is that number? Number of known atoms in the universe is 2 to the 158th to 2 to the 246th is the estimate, right? So complexity is found in these interactions, which are just growing off the chart. A quote I like to share in a lot of the presentations I give is from a book I read a couple years ago, and I think everyone would probably agree with these statements. Today, more and more design problems are reaching insoluble levels of complexity. At the same time that problems increase in quantity, complexity, and difficulty, they also change faster than before. So once again, that rate of change. Trial and error design is an admirable method, but is just real-world trial and error, which we are trying to replace by symbolic method. We can read into that right there, models, right? Symbolic method, models. Because trial and error is too expensive and too slow. So, anyone know who might have stated these things? If you're at where I presented this the other day, of course you know who it is, but Christopher Alexander, over 50 years ago. True then, more true now, and even more true 50 years from now, and even 5 years from now. So, transformation is something that we have to do. That's why it's one of the 7 strategic objectives of INCOSE. I've listed it here, that INCOSE accelerates the transformation of systems engineering to a model-based discipline. So, here's where we start to break it down a little bit. What is accelerates transformation and model-based discipline? Accelerate because this is going to happen no matter what. It has been happening. There's been great progress. We can do more, but we need to accelerate the rate at which we grow and mature and find that institutions adopt these methods. So how can we accelerate? And there's some frameworks that we'll talk about that typical issues in trying to move through and change things. Transformation is a marked change. There's a lot of different ways of thinking of transformation. We are thinking of it very broadly. Often, folks will talk about model-based systems engineering being composed of three things: a language, right, a method, and a tool. But when we talk about transformation, we need to think about the institution, the enterprise. Most importantly, the people that are involved in trying to make these changes, how we learn, how we communicate, and many other dimensions in order to make this a reality. Model-based discipline, here we're very broad in what we're trying to describe. Oftentimes people will connect with MBSE and SysML and think that's it. SysML is a very powerful tool, it's helpful, but it's not all of it, right? We need to think very broadly. We need to think of all the different types of models that we use across the life cycle, how we can integrate those models to improve decisions, communication, and how we envision and design our systems. So let's start with a model-based discipline. Models are not new to us, right? Anyone who's an engineer has been working with models for a very long time. The transformation is not a wholesale change. We're not trying to make a radical change. We're trying to leverage what we've been doing in new ways and leverage the new capabilities and tools that we have, and as well as languages to express our system models. It's the next evolutionary step. Sometimes it's not so much quitting some of the things that we've been doing, let's say a focus on process, use of documents. We're going to continue to use documents. I remember in the shift with CAD, I was a designer early on in my career, and it was as if everyone's going to use the model, we will not need drawings. Well, I knew that wasn't true. I was going to give someone on the machine shop floor prints that they were going to build to. Documents are important, drawings are important, but models were the backing of it, and we're going to move to that same thing in a functional space for our systems. So in some ways, we are going back to the future in that we're going to focus more on the analysis and the models again. Understanding the current state, we know where we are. We've taken inventory. There's some things that we still need to discover, I'm sure. And then we need to go to this future state, and it's not redefining it. It's been laid out pretty well with Vision 2025 and a lot of great work through leaders here in INCOSE. And leveraging transformation and change management methods. It goes beyond, once again, just the technology. I've included a framework here just as an example. This is one that I've used before just through my work within Booz Allen, envisioning, defining, designing, developing, deploying. But there's some things that are really important here. It shows the people, the processes, physical infrastructure, the tools, technology. Some will add governance to that. I'm sure at some point everyone's kind of thought through all those various aspects in building a capability. But not only do you need to build the capability, someone needs to own the capability. We need program stewardship and ongoing management of it. So these are all important dimensions that we need to consider. An equation that I came across in getting my master's was here in the lower left. Achieving breakthrough performance, a 10 times improvement. That's the kind of thing that we're going to need to see, that kind of magnitude. Was equal to this quantity of change management times the organizational environment, the business process reengineering, and the IT. It was an information systems course. You think about that, in this equation you can have the organizational environment that's ready, the learning and development is in place, let's say, people are open to change, business processes are there, you've reorganized them, you've made them more efficient, maybe more lean, the technology and tools are in place. But if you don't manage the change, this whole thing nets out to zero. There may be improvement, but it's not going to be significant. Now, just for fun, I made kind of another equation. Achieving immediate perceived impact, right? A change mandate, some flashy visualizations, PowerPoint skill, and the executive presence of the briefer. Who's experienced that or seen that? I see smiles, right? We have to get to the fundamentals, and that's what we like to do in INCOSE, right? We want to get to the fundamentals of what we really need to do to make the changes from a technology perspective, but we talk a lot about leadership. We do talk a lot about change. We talk a lot about integrating multiple disciplines. We're interdisciplinary, and that's what transformation requires. Now on to accelerates. This is the hype cycle from Gartner. If you look across the bottom, you'll see several of the phases of this hype cycle, and we've probably experienced this maybe with the technology in our systems, but you can even think of this in terms of our transformation effort. Technology trigger, I mentioned the complexity that we see today. That's definitely a trigger for us to do some things differently and manage things differently. There's a peak of inflated expectations. Many people, when they first are introduced go there right away. It's kind of an overshoot in a control system is another way to look at this, right? Then there's this trough of disillusionment. Well, maybe this isn't going to do all I thought it would. It's a little bit harder than I thought. I need to learn a little bit more. It's a different paradigm. And then with time, there's a slope of enlightenment, and then you kind of hit this peak of productivity, plateau of productivity. What we need to do in INCOSE, and part of my role, is to help you all and those that are the change agents within your organizations so that we can minimize this peak of inflated expectations and bring up this trough of disillusionment. As we share knowledge with one another, we shared experiences, I think that over time, we can decrease this within a domain, across domains, project to project, program to program within an institution. And not only that, but we can get that productivity slope going up as well. Jeffrey Moore, Crossing the Chasm, another great work that I think many are familiar with, talked about technology adoption and kind of classified this issue of technology transition and what we have as far as a struggle oftentimes. We have innovators, technology enthusiasts, going to early adopters. I would classify many of us into one of those two categories that are working in model-based or model-based related areas when we're talking about model-based systems engineering, right? And as systems engineers, we are often visionary and trying to find ways of doing new things. And just crossing that chasm into those early pragmatists, early majority pragmatists, who say they don't like those folks who like to navigate by using the force, right? Late majority and the laggers and skeptics who you're never going to convince. So this is another framework which we can think about, and there's techniques and things to consider in trying to cross this chasm that exists. And you can see an overlay there. So the question is, where do you think you are, or your organization, as far as really trying to manage the complexity that's ahead of us? Where do you plot yourself? JPL shared some things yesterday, the day before, and I thought that it was quite interesting, and you could kind of see where they were really, I would say, working up through this trough of disillusionment and shared some things and lessons learned and into some of the productivity pieces. But even there's times when you find that you might be at this inflated expectation as well. This is something that Joachim Fuchs shared with me. I thought was quite great. Water resistant, shock resistant, change resistant. It's what we're dealing with, right? And oftentimes, that might be us. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It works. But what works today doesn't work tomorrow, and it's certainly not going to work 5 years from now. And you're not going to turn on a capability like a light switch. So we have to start planning, we have to start thinking about how we're going to do these things, and we need to start influencing those and find who those change agents are. So encouragement, if you want to truly understand something, try to change it. That's what we need to do. We need to be bold in our organizations and try to make these changes. And the best way to manage change is to create it. Another thing that was stated was, instead of asking for permission or asking for funding, what if we really think about what's the funding that we have to get the job done, and if this is the right way to do it, let's do it. Let's just make it happen. Let's show the results and the outcomes and the impact, right? As David Long's talked about many times, it's that impact, it's the stakeholder, it's not just the end system. How do we make that impact? Vision 2025, our from and to state. If you haven't read the document, really you need to go check it out. It's really great. One of the things I like to highlight here is the to. If you go down about midway, the use of internet-driven knowledge, representation, and immersive technologies enable highly efficient and shared human understanding of systems in a virtual environment. That shared human understanding is a part that I really, really like. So we can't have just a core group of modelers who really are understanding and learning an immense amount. The projects that we work with often incorporate tens, hundreds, thousands, and even more people. And we need the shared understanding and the common vision. And models are really about that and bringing the physical sciences and things that we know that we can predict to a large degree so that we can improve performance. But if we can't communicate it appropriately, we're really going to struggle. So we need that shared human understanding. These are the objectives of the role for transformation that were shared with the board that kind of helped create the role in trying to help INCOSE move forward with this, advance the MBSE practice, promote and advance MBSE within the global MBE environment, mainstream model-based systems engineering, connect with other domains. We had a meeting this morning with BIM and talking about BIM and what can we within INCOSE do across our working groups to demonstrate model-based systems engineering within a domain and how it can further BIM and how we can add value to some of the things that they're doing and how what they're doing really represents maybe what we're looking to achieve. And of course, aligning with Vision 2025. Now, there are some strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. If we start to think about, in the strategic sense, often this is something that's done, a SWOT analysis. If we look over time, I think the workshop has been going on since 2007, MBSE workshop. A lot of interest, a lot of momentum, bringing in a lot of new folks. When we asked any new attendees, even here at this IW, I would say it's somewhere between 30 to 50 people, it looked like, by a show of hands. So that's a great strength. Some of the weaknesses, some narrowly defined views of what MBSE is at times. We need to expand that view. We need to get a better theoretical foundation under some of the things that we're doing. We heard about ontology and what we need to do there. Threats. If we don't do this, it's going to get done by somebody else. And it's going to get done in different ways. And I sincerely believe that we in INCOSE have the right thinkers, the right people, the right minds to influence this. So we have to be those influencers, get involved in the right places and make these changes. So it's really about change. Transformation is about change and leadership. And there are many opportunities for us to make these impacts. So as the AD, I have a team, kind of a core team. It's Jeff Bergenthal, Sandy Friedenthal, Joachim Fuchs, John Gill, Mark Sampson, and Bill Schindel. There are others that are helping. We've kind of talked about how do we get a larger community. We want stakeholder representatives. We need to hear the voice. If we develop products, we want feedback. So if you're interested in participating, please reach to me. We're also looking to collaborate with a lot of other organizations. NAFEMS and BIM have been mentioned, and we have MOUs in place or getting signed soon. Some of the products, strategy and plan for transformation. We'll probably have that by the IS this year. One of the big things for me is this business case, ROI. It's really a value briefing, making the case. For those of you that are out there trying to make this change within your organizations, one of the first questions is, what's the return on investment? Right? If we think about it, actually that's the same question about systems engineering that we often get. So we need to make the case, and I want to do that through some storylines and case studies, and that can come from companies, from tool vendors, from an individual who's got something. I'd like to build those all up together, and we can share a common story and help those that are trying to make that change. Also, some of the transformation principles and heuristics. There are quite a few shared here over the last couple days that I've been taking notes and want to kind of consolidate, and we'll work to make available to everyone. Of course, strategic collaboration and communication are essential to this, and just this cross-cutting workshop that we called it, the MBSE workshop has kind of changed form, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but getting joint sessions. Our working groups often have very related content, or we can help one another in ways that can advance a mutual interest. And so the more that we're able to do that, I think the more progress that we're going to make. And we've had some joint sessions here through the IW that have shown that as well. So this invigorate and integrate working groups. So in some ways, it's an integrator of integrators, right? Because that's what we are as systems engineers. This was laid out of what success looks like at the IW2016 and or the IS, and I think that we've made some progress on this. A new AD, I've been appointed, strategy defined, like I said, I think we'll have that by the IS. First steps taken to mainstream MBSE, integrate the MBSE workshop in IW, which we've done this year, our first step in it, and explicit MBSE activities displayed during ongoing working group activities. We've got a schedule, I think you all may have seen that. And then what success looks like at the end of 5 years. Decision makers ask for models rather than documents. There are some cases of that, but generally that's not the case, right? So we need to get there. MBSE is not a separate track, but integrated. Some have said that, rather than MBSE, we just say systems engineering and everyone knows that it has a very strong modeling foundation. We don't have to designate it, that we're getting there and that we actually arrive. And then systems engineering is a model-based discipline explicitly connected to X number of MBE applications. And that's something that's growing through these collaborations. And I really do think we can do more than this. And I expect to do more than this, as much as we can. So what have we accomplished? One of the things that was really hard for me was when I would search MBSE, which is a term when people are just trying to find out more, something that they might do. It goes to the OMG wiki, which is great. That's something that we've developed, and OMG has let us use so that we can be very open with what we do. But it didn't jump out at you that it was INCOSE that was really doing this work. And so we needed, even on the website, our website, we didn't have the MBSE initiative clearly where you could find it and discover it. So we really wanted to make that visible. Have a visible face that that's what we're doing, we're helping with this, we're actually leading the charge. So it is now the transformation objective is listed on the website. Some of this content that I've shared with you is out there. And if you go to the working groups, the MBSE initiative is listed. You can click on it and you can see all the activities associated with model-based systems engineering on INCOSE's website. Once again, that wasn't there before. So small thing, but we need to make this information available and also, in a way, take credit for the work that we're doing. When I would do a search on MBSE on the INCOSE website, getting these pages up was important because what I would find is something that started in the Michigan chapter back in 2010 was a small MBSE working group after Sandy came out and gave some training. Well, it hasn't been going on for recently. And that was the first thing that came up and said, there's a group in Michigan that does some of this. That's great, but there's a lot of really good content that we wanted to get out to folks. And then there were some other links that didn't take us to places that we needed to see. Well, now it'll take you right to the transformation, right to the content that's out on the wiki, but on our internal site. So people can get to the information more readily. Other things that we've been doing, trying to understand our stakeholders, not just in INCOSE, but who are the stakeholders we're working with in our organizations, the various domains. We can think of this in a very personal sense, people that we work with, as well as very broad sense. So we're defining that. We're also identifying the enablers and roadblocks and things that we think that need to occur. We had a breakout session at the IES last year covering process method, value ROI, and documents to models. And we have kind of voice of the customer through the CAB, through that effort. And then here at the IW, we had a panel and an MBSE 101 session where there was a lot of rich dialogue about some of the challenges and issues in trying to implement methods. So we've got that as well. Funding MBSE, funding model-based methods, interchange formats, intellectual property issues, and human interaction with models across the life cycle. That's another key and important thing that we need to consider. And had a quick discussion with Donna Rhodes about some of the work in the CERC and how they're trying to look at that and how we might collaborate and try to think where the transformation effort links up, because that's a key aspect of it. If you haven't seen it, this is what the MBSE workshop this year looks like, and what it is and how it's different is before it was very planned. Mark and Sandy had done great work from 2007 to the present, really, and guided me in how it all worked. And so what we did is we asked, and I called every working group lead and said, will you have any model-based content? And I'll tell you, I had some very interesting conversations. Some said, we don't do models. Okay. Well, do you represent your information in any kind of interesting way? And for one example, there was systems dynamics was mentioned. I thought, that's a model. That counts. But the perception was if it wasn't SysML, it wasn't modeling for some that weren't real involved in some of the content that had been going in the workshop. And so I was able to kind of dispel some of these thoughts and say, no, really, that's the kind of thing we want to highlight, because those are the types of things that we need to do going forward. And so many volunteered, and we had, I think, a very robust program of working group activities with model-based related content. And I just was calling it that, model-based related content, and trying to get away from preconceived ideas of what MBSE was. So what did it look like? We had 30 plus model-based related sessions, 4 joint sessions with patterns, system of systems, PLE, Agile, and AFEMS. About half of the present working groups had model content. I counted 34 present, and 15 of them were on this agenda. And receive an additional 8 commitments for next year, as far as those that want to participate. Mark Sampson shared something that was very interesting. He talked about this motorsport. Nissan picks racing driver wanted, no experience necessary. Do you know what they're doing? They're playing the game, Gran Torino, I believe. And those who scored really well got to race. I think there's 400,000 or plus participants who are working this. And when they showed up on day one, he was telling me in Le Mans they got 3rd place. They eventually got 1st place. And that's through a simulation of sorts, right? Pretty amazing. So the world's changing. He also shared about, in 2007, when he was talking about his son was working with Lego Mindstorm, and how his son, at the time, I think he said was 7, was having these very interesting conversations about, you know, what was going on with the gears and the CAD and what would work and what wouldn't work. And he was shocked at the discussion he was having with his child at this age because of what was available to him and how he could manipulate these things so readily and easily. He talked about the 3D printer. When he got it, the first thing it did is print a part for itself to update. It wasn't just a software update, you have a hardware update for itself. And that his son was building a game console now, and that he was practicing driving with a simulator, much like I just talked about with Nissan. And he said, yeah, it's not too bad. He's getting ready to learn to drive. And so he said he went out to a parking lot and kind of got the experience. And then this is my son here, pointing at a poster, it says patterns. He's at a STEM school. This is him in 3rd grade. He's now in 4th, a STEM-focused school. And these are the posters that are on all the walls of his classrooms, in Spanish, in his homeroom. He has engineering tech, by the way, in 3rd grade. It's a fantastic school, really interesting, but systems, patterns, interdependence in all the classrooms. This is the distribution of the population of the world. A lot of kids are coming up in a new world, right? They're seeing the world differently. They are seeing models. They are seeing simulations. They're seeing many things, and so we need to be ready for them. That was part of Mark's message. So here's another way to think of it. Motivation for transformation. When the rate of external change exceeds the rate of internal change, the end of your business is in sight. For some, that's enough, right? It is not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory. Think of the cartoon again, right? So transformation is necessary, and we're going to do all we can. And to do that, we all need to work together as best as we can. It's not just me. I'm going to be here trying to coordinate and help, and wherever I can, please let me know if you identify an opportunity, and I'm going to try and run it down. But we need to collectively do this as INCOSE. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Mike. Some questions about transformation? We got a little time. Go ahead. You're closer to this one, but that's okay.
Firstly, congratulations, good presentation, good rationale for why we need to change, and I think, I hope there's very few people in here that would disagree. I do want to point out, though, if you look at 2019 as you did, at that time, systems engineering is going to be part of a much larger movement, which you've introduced at the beginning, namely that of the digital transformation of our society, of our economy, of our industry. There's a few chances that lie ahead that are extremely important, namely, or an example, to get systems engineering and project management closer together. If you look at the PLM world and the developments there, they're moving into their digital tools, they're moving into their digital databases, etc. We have an enormous chance of making one system model, which is the horizontal integration model, and have both the PLM and the systems engineering access it and use it instead of using two of them. Always understanding that what is happening is a move towards a digital enterprise, and systems engineering is just one of the elements in all of that. So it's not a question, it's a comment.
Yes, and a very important comment. And actually, I'll take a quick moment to make an additional comment on that. I mapped all of our working groups at one point. I said the collaboration of our working groups are essential in order to do this, I believe, as PMI and that kind of collaboration, not only within but external. When I mapped out the ISO 15288 kind of process areas, there's one called implementation, which is really around manufacturing to a degree if you're into build and that type of thing. And I couldn't find anything that mapped to it within INCOSE strongly. Everything else we had something, but we kind of missed that spot. And that's where there is a lot of cost, right? And that's where a lot of business cases are made. And I'll tell you, as a former manufacturing engineer with a high production in automotive and that kind of thing, there's a dynamic control plan I had to build that traced to every feature in the product. And we did all kinds of things that were modeled through databases and things, but the connection between manufacturing and product was the disconnection was so strong. And this has an opportunity across the life cycle, and that's what really made me think about this, the PLM. It's a life cycle issue. And so if we can bridge that alone, that's a huge step if we can help do that. So it's something that we should consider and we need to really kind of think about, especially the industrial internet. And there's going to be a lot of push of data and information and quality and everything that affect our systems. So another comment adjacent to that. One more? Anything else? Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Just one observation. As we go to more integrated models and MBSE and linking to effectively manufacturing models, I think we just got to work remembering that system engineering is an interdisciplinary discipline, and we need to work on the interaction of systems engineering as a discipline and the rest of engineering. I think sometimes we forget that. So, Eric Honor's work says 17% system engineering effort. That implies an 83% non-rest of engineering effort. We must work on getting that so we don't just become an extra silo. And I think the modeling will make us integrate.
It absolutely can enable the integration, and agreed. We are interdisciplinary. We're the ones that need to be the glue that pull these things together. So thank you, and to Mike.
Tough act to follow. Pardon me while I get these slides up. If anybody wants to take a stretch, please feel free to do so. Is that it? Oh, very good. All right. Technology is wonderful. Good morning. So, like I said, he's a tough act to follow. I'm going to have something a little more practical, which this is an initiative that we call Impactful Products. Our idea is to try to meet one of these 5-year objectives that we have by not only creating new products, but really collecting all the great products we already have and making them more readily available. So I'm going to show you what our plans are today and our progress so far. So one of our 5-year objectives really requires, I believe, a mindset change. And in order to make that mindset change, what we have to do, I think, is really consider that one of our most impactful products is our website. It reaches out to a lot of people, both in the public and also our members. And as you know, we've recently upgraded it, and we're all working together to try to make it as good as possible. And hold on a second. Sorry, technical difficulty. No? Oh, is that it? Sorry. Yeah, okay, never mind. Figures. Yeah. Thanks, Troy. Appreciate that. I buggered it up somehow. Okay, we're going to look over there. So, yeah, one of the things that we're going to try to do is really look at the, we're going to really look at trying to do these mindset changes. And one mindset change is public nomenclature versus INCOSE nomenclature. We have a lot of public websites, and we have a lot of public views, but we use a lot of our internal nomenclature. So we'd like to try to address that. The other thing we're trying to address is really, instead of making, just making products, we really want to try to be better at life cycle management of those products. There's a tendency for us to be very prolific. We make a product, and we don't care so much as we should about its distribution channels, its access, and its target market. So, and also its changes over its life cycle, keeping track of it. So basically what I'm asking my committee to do is to put a little bit of systems engineering in what we do. I figured that would be a reasonable request. And then we really want to go from for members only, that kind of concept, to public showcase. Because we have so many really great products already, but unless you're a member, you don't even know that we have these products. And then I really want to go from, oops, sorry. Did it get stuck? It's not my day. By the way, this is Nico. He's a wizard, and if anyone can fix it, he can. Oh. We're getting closer. And then another thing, I'm sorry, I just saw it up here. We want to go from having various warehouses of products to really one warehouse, so that you get to a page. Yes, thank you so much, Nico. So you get to a page on the internet, for instance, and you should be able to access all of our products from there, rather than, oh, I heard that you could find this product on that page, and oh, you could find that product on that page. So we're slowly trying to get there. And essentially, we really want to kind of have this overall view of kind of the non-members have access to see everything that's available. And I think that's the most important mindset change that we're trying to strive for. And as I said, I think once they have access to see all the products, we could even, if they don't want to be a member, they could pay for it, or they could be a member. So we can use that to our advantage in terms of bringing in more revenue or bringing in more members. And then, and basically we could even use some of the content as teasers, like SE Basics, or one idea that came up yesterday was we have great webinars. I mean, what if we have some webinars that are for free, and if you want to see the next in the series, become a member or pay for it. So these are the kind of concepts that we're looking at right now. So I'd like to spend a moment kind of breaking down the different detailed initiatives that we have into two big categories. So one is kind of top-down, and the other is bottom-up. And when we look at top-down, we kind of went and asked our stakeholders, what are your needs? And then we try to prioritize those needs in terms of what we really think we have the capabilities to deliver. And we discussed that with the board. And so now we're kind of moving forward with this, this kind of list. We interviewed academia. They wanted several really cool things. We interviewed the CAB and the IOB. They wanted several really cool things too. Some of it overlaps, by the way. And then we had a generic input from multiple people. Here are some examples of the things that they really want, and all of them rational, I think. And then we tried to do a little bit of a ranking of what our capabilities were and how we could actually achieve some of these things. And so I'd like to report on maybe the top few of those items. I'll give you a quiz later, and anyone who can remember all of these actually will get a free SE handbook. Yes. So here's the progress so far on that. By the way, we are still reviewing the cab needs because there's been an ongoing, and I'm so grateful for this, an ongoing interview with the cab where they are always adjusting their needs, and we're trying to respond to those. So I want you to know that this isn't a static list, that there are ongoing needs that we're reviewing as well. But essentially, I don't know if you remember, one of the things was related to what Troy was talking about. A number of members wanted to see kind of a transformation toolkit, if you will. So this transformation that we're going through now and we're trying to promote out to companies, a lot of companies are saying, hey, I really need some kind of package of information, promotional material, reference models, different kinds of, maybe value propositions. And so, in fact, Troy's team is working on that already. And then in academia, they especially said, hey, we really need a library of short movies. The webinars are great, but if I'm giving a course, for instance, I'd like to pull up a 5-minute snippet on a particular subject matter and have a world leader stand up there and describe it in layman's terms, and so that people can kind of have a different, professors and teachers can have kind of a different type of media to pull from. So I think that's a very rational thing, and in fact, we're planning on doing that in collaboration with the Academic Council. And then the request of ontologies for each domain, I think that's wonderful. I mean, every new working group I've ever worked with, the very first activity that they have is, let's make a translation between system engineering speak and my domain. So, and after a while, once they learn the engineering speak, they don't really feel like they need it as much. But I think that's an indication that if we want to grow our membership into other domains, we're really going to need to provide some kind of Rosetta Stone or something for those domains. So there is a new working group emerging. We're considering a working group anyway. We recently had a proposal, and I hope that we can make it happen, because I think that'll be valuable work that many, many of us can use. And then this is another thing that I see coming up over the years. It's related to ontologies in that a lot of places, especially in the commercial sector, are still struggling. I mean, my SE colleagues in healthcare still struggle with proving their value of actually being a system engineer. And if we're going to go into new territories, like let's say oil and gas industries, I think we're going to have to be able to provide those people in those companies with some material that can help them with demonstrating the value of system engineering. Of course, it's easy to convince us. We're already convinced. You all came here. But there are a lot of people that would really benefit from being armed with these kinds of things. So it turns out that we've collected a lot of these things over the years, but they're all in these different repositories. So one of the efforts that our new marketing director is getting into is trying to collect all those things together, see what we have already, try to target them to different audiences, and make nice packages available for the different domains. So as you're probably already guessing, there's probably a lot of material we already have that we should reuse, and this is the idea of the bottom-up part of this initiative. We have that mindset change that I talked about, and I think that's really important for the bottom-up especially. But we have another initiative called the Treasure Hunt, which is exactly what it sounds like. We actually are actively pursuing and hunting down all the different websites and all the different chapters and all the different working groups across the world. What products do you have that we don't know about? And it turns out that there's quite a few. And then what we want to do is be transparent during this, and also, and that's why I'm here. Also, we want to improve the life cycle processes that we have for products, and so I'll introduce a few things that we're talking about there. There's also a sub-project called Anthologies, where the idea is to pick some domains and compile great works and white papers of the past that are on that topic, put them together into a volume, and make it available to people if they want it. And also, as I mentioned before, the website's one of our most used products, so we're trying to help Bill Chone and the IT group with the website improvements. And then I've had a lot of questions after we moved from iPub to Wiley. A lot of people said, but where are the presentations? Those of you who have used iPub before, I don't know if you have, but if you have, you may have noticed that not only were the white papers available, but in a lot of cases, the presentations that were available during the session were available with the paper. So we're going to try to resurrect those and make them available to members, just like it was on iPub, except for in a different format. So that's an overview, and let me get into some details. So, you know, the treasure hunt, as I mentioned before, we're trying to find these golden nuggets. The progress made so far is that we've done a survey of the working groups, and I have to thank Bob Schwartz and Paul Friends for helping with that. We found over 100 products that were identified from over 40 of our working groups. And we also did a survey of the sectors, you know, in all the different chapters, thanks to the sector directors and David Long for driving that initiative. And we found about 49 products from 31 chapters in 7 languages. So I think these are wonderful assets that now we're, from the bottom up, going to try to take the next steps on, which is not publish all of them necessarily, because we need to spend a little time looking at them and seeing what's appropriate and what might need revision. However, first we're going to try to decide what to showcase. We're going to collect them into our main warehouse and then showcase them to everyone. So we're making some real progress there. Be on the lookout for some of these products that maybe you've never seen before. And then another aspect of this bottom-up impactful products is really to just gain access to products, make it really easy. And so what we're trying to strive for is this kind of single web page point of access for all products. And you may see things starting to change on the website where you just go to one place and you can see all the products that we have. So far, we haven't done that change, but what we have done is an analysis of those changes. We did some architecture and some design change, simple modeling, and we've made the request to the IT department to go ahead and do that. So they're analyzing it to see how they can accommodate those requests. And that's just an example of what one of the outputs that we gave to them. There's also something that Ray Jorgensen did, which is really cool. It's a gold nugget library. I don't know if anyone has seen it, maybe a show of hands. Has anyone seen the gold nugget library yet? One. Well, I encourage you to go look for it. It's, oh gosh, it's too small. But if you go into our INCOSE website under Connect, you can find this gold nugget library. And what it is basically a hot link to the most commonly accessed products online. So in other words, it's a bit of a dashboard of products that are being accessed the most, and it gives you a hot link to all of them right now. So this is kind of one of the many things that we're trying to do to make access to products much easier. And then what's our next steps? As I mentioned, we're going to try to make those modifications to those pages, and then create the instructions for these gold nuggets, and find workarounds for the architecture. I don't know if you're aware of it, but our website really is made up of 3 individual packages, if you will, and they all have to have some limited connection between them. So in navigating from the public website to Connect to member services and back, it's a little bit difficult to navigate that architecture. So we're trying to find workarounds for that to make it as smooth as possible for people trying to access products. Now, working group, you've probably noticed that the working group websites have been starting to come up, and really it's super important for transparency for a volunteer organization to have really easy access to working groups and what they're doing. So what we did was we created these kinds of public websites where the admin rights are the working group chairs. It wasn't always like that. They would have to wait until Central could help them. But now the working group chairs are in total charge of editing their own public website. And now many of them are up to date. And our next steps is continue to drive getting them all up to date. And we're also supporting our working group chairs by making and helping them make these sites and do the updates. And we're trying to make it as easy to do anytime they want, so they don't have to wait for somebody to help them. And we're also trying to improve the working group access to the public. You know, the idea of having a full list of working groups available with one click, we're still trying to work on that to get it just right. It's getting there. And I don't know if you noticed, but also some of the working groups actually take advantage of having a public website by doing things like linking to public content. So for instance, if they have a public offering, let's say a pamphlet or something that they want to give away to the public to kind of showcase their work, they could put a link to it right there in the website. So a number of working groups have actually taken advantage of this kind of public-facing exposure, which I think we should continue to do to try to get our name out there and your good work out there. So I mentioned before trying to do some life cycle management, which you know, with an all-volunteer organization, has to be done in a very lean and agile way. New submissions that are coming in for products, because we have a process, there's actually a process for doing this, are kind of right now being handheld through the process, because the process is a little outdated, I'll be honest with you. It needs to be streamlined. So with the help of Ken, who's sitting in the front here, we've actually fast-tracked a number of products through recently, and I'm really proud of doing that. Meanwhile, Ken's working on revising the procedures so that they're much more streamlined. One of the key points of the procedure is the technical product plan, and if you want to make a product in your working group, it really is important for you to fill out one of those forms. It's fairly easy, but the idea is we need a central kind of coordination of who's working on what, and when are we expecting it, so we could do some life cycle management, and to also look to see if there's another working group actually doing the same thing. It would be kind of nice to collaborate. You might not know about it, but we do, and that's one of the reasons for the TPP, as we call it. If you've never heard of the TPP, let me or Ken know. We'd be happy to give you the form. It's super simple, and we want to, again, be of service to you. We don't want it to be a burden, but we do want to kind of keep track of what people are planning to make products on. By the way, we're trying to make a clarification between what's refereed and non-refereed processes. In other words, you know, these white papers at IS, they're actually refereed with multiple reviewers and this kind of thing. Not all products need to do that. Some products just need to be reviewed by the subject matter experts within the working group. So it doesn't really need to be as all complex as IS papers. So I also made a documentation vault. The idea here is that if we want to have configuration management of our internal INCOSE products, we ought to have one repository for them where we can find the latest version of it, and also the author can find and make a revision and edit and keep control of it. And then we're reaching out to different vendors for helping with internal publications. And our next steps really are to try to release and lean down these procedures and make the product development process more obvious to everybody and begin to populate this documentation vault. And another mini activity here is these anthologies. I mentioned it before. The idea is to really, I mean, we've got over 20 years of content, and I've looked back at 1991 and 1992. I have to tell you, a lot of it is still relevant. I know it's hard to believe, but a lot of it is still relevant. So we've got a lot of great information out there. For instance, you know, if you're a company that actually is in a domain that's new to system engineering, some of the stuff from 1991, which we totally take for granted, like let's say integrated product development teams or requirements management or architecture, is completely brand new to them. And having some of these references, it would be really useful. So our progress so far is I went back to my stakeholders in the board, and I asked them basically what was their favorite, and they basically said defense, MBSE, measurement. And so I took defense and I prototyped that, and we got permission from Wiley to use these already published things. And the next steps really are to take that to the next step and actually publish it. So we're trying to make some website improvements. I've got 13 testers that have volunteered in technical operations to help IT with testing. The Human Systems Integration Working Group has agreed to take a look and see what can be done with that. And also, and everyone's entering the issues into the issue tracker. I don't know if you know this, but this is important. And this is an area where you can help. If you find a problem on the website, or if you have a pet peeve, enter it into the issue tracker. You'll find that under Connect, under Help, and there's an issue tracker entry there. There's a change control board that reviews those things and processes them. There's actually a process in place to make those improvements, but if they don't know about the problem, it's probably not going to get fixed. Lastly, the resurrection of the symposia presentations. I made a request for these. We're going to gather them up and publish them. Pretty simple. Here's one that might be a little bit new to people. The idea here is we have so many of these products, and we have some targeted domains that we want to make toolkits for, or packages for. One of the thoughts is, why not put together a product line of our products, where essentially what we have is we target certain domains, and then we put together a matrix of what's common elements and what are tailored elements for each one of the domains. And we prepare these packages in a way that are neat and ready to go, available to the domains, and with input from the domains as well. Hugo, is that okay? Good, all right. So if you're interested in helping, our committee needs volunteers. We need people that can do reviewing, editing, coordination, and even some leaders for the sub-projects. And I know you probably don't have much time, but if you have just a little bit of time, a reviewer or that kind of role is perfectly fine. So contact me, and that's how you can contact me. And now that you can take pictures, if you have a QR reader, you should be able to read that and get my email. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So you mentioned about the symposia.
Yes.
It just so happens last night I wanted to find, I was Googling and an old INCOSE symposia article came up and I tried to find it and it took me immediately to Wiley. And Wiley said, you got to pay for it. And I said, what? I'm an INCOSE member. So what I did was I navigated back to INCOSE. I forget where I ended up, searched there, it came up, took me to Wiley, and there was the article, all of the back symposia were there for free.
That's right.
So I think, you know, that's really complicated.
Yes.
And there have been times when I've just given up. Unfortunately, last night, it was just, you know, under, I think, 2 minutes to connect that chain. So
Yes.
I guess I wasn't sure what you meant about these previous symposia, because it looks like they're all accessible in a somewhat roundabout way through Wiley.
I'd like to point out and clarify, yes, we have a contract with Wiley to make accessible to members all of the past proceedings, and that's a great way to do it. One of the issues that I think you ran into was it's not so obvious from our website how to do that. My intention is to make it super obvious, so that's easy.
Working with Wiley, so I don't have to go through INCOSE first. Direct to Wiley. I don't know how.
Let me look into that. Thank you.
Because that's
Thanks.
the problem I have.
Yeah.
Google search, it almost immediately takes me to Wiley.
Thank you for that. Let me look into that. Yeah, I understand. Next question, please.
Great minds think alike. The Measurement Working Group is proposing a bibliography of everything related to measurement with links from the working group.
Oh,
So if every working group did that, we would have much of what you're proposing to do.
Yeah.
And I would hope your architecture is consistent with the working group structure or would be correlated to it.
could you send me more information about that so we can collaborate on that?
I'll talk to the working group chairman.
Okay,
Right.
thank you. Thank you, Paul. Any other questions? Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.